He didn't just betray her. He waited until her body was torn from childbirth, until she could barely stand, until she came home from the hospital holding their newborn in her arms. Then he emptied their savings and blocked her access to everything. Standing at that pharmacy counter, stitches still fresh, baby crying on her shoulder, Natalie Reyes heard the words insufficient funds and felt her entire world collapse. What she didn't know, what her husband didn't know either, was that 3 weeks earlier, a letter had arrived that would change everything. Her father, before he died, had left her $148 million. Stay with me, because what happens next is not just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when the woman you try to destroy discovers she was never as powerless as you believed. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Natalie Reyes, 31, had been a rising financial analyst before she married Brandon Hale and got pregnant. She'd been the kind of employee managers fought to keep sharp with numbers, careful with risk, impossible to fool with a bad spreadsheet. She gave it up gladly, or told herself she did, when she and Brandon decided she'd focus on the baby. Brandon worked in finance too, or said he did, vague about clients, frequently traveling, always somewhere just out of reach when she asked for details. Natalie's late father, Robert, had raised her alone after her mother passed, teaching her that loyalty mattered more than money and that a woman should never fully hand over control of her own life, not out of mistrust, but out of self-respect. She'd absorbed the lesson intellectually. She hadn't yet learned it the hard way. 6 months into her pregnancy, exhausted and nauseous, she'd let Brandon handle the accounts. Paperwork appeared. She signed where he pointed, too sick to read every line. He called it simplifying things for tax season. It was not that. The signs came quietly at first. Late-night calls Brandon stepped away to take. A name, just 2 letters flashing on his phone before he snatched it away. A joint banking app that logged her out one night for no reason she could explain. Her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Ortiz, brought over a casserole one afternoon and gently, reluctantly, mentioned she'd seen Brandon getting into his car with a woman more than once. Natalie made excuses. A coworker, probably. Mrs. Ortiz didn't look convinced. That night, Natalie found a drawer of paperwork she didn't recognize, new accounts opened months earlier, transfers she hadn't approved, a real estate brochure for a downtown condo. Buried in the stack was a printed email between Brandon and someone named Chloe Marsh. Subject line, timeline for after the baby comes. Her hands went cold. She told herself there had to be an explanation. Some small part of her already knew there wasn't. What Natalie didn't yet know was that the worst of it wouldn't happen at home. It would happen in a delivery room, while she was at her most powerless, and 3 weeks later, in a pharmacy line, while she was still recovering from it. Natalie's labor was long and hard. Brandon stood beside her bed, physically present, his attention somewhere else entirely, his phone buzzing every few minutes, his hand slipping it out of view whenever she looked over. Her best friend Priya held her other hand and refused to let go. The nurse, watching Brandon's detachment with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen every kind of partner in that room, made a note in the chart. Father disengaged, left room during active labor. Because he did leave for 2 minutes, he said, to take an urgent call. In the hallway, out of Natalie's sight, he confirmed a transfer of $62,000 to an account under Chloe Marsh's name, timed to complete that same night. When their daughter was born minutes later, Brandon's face showed no warmth, no tears, only a glance at his watch. And hidden from Natalie, the faint satisfaction of a man checking a box on a plan already in motion. 2 days after giving birth, still weak, still stitched, Natalie stood at a pharmacy counter trying to buy postpartum medication. Her card was declined, then declined again. Priya, standing beside her, quietly paid instead and drove her home. At home, the truth arrived in pieces. A text from the bank. Her authorized user access had been revoked as of midnight. A login into the banking app revealing 0 balances across every account, savings, checking, the emergency fund her father had once insisted they keep. a transaction history showing $148,700 transferred out 6 days earlier, another $62,000 the night of her delivery. Brandon's phone went straight to voicemail every time she called. In a drawer, Natalie found the emails Brandon had never meant for her to see, dated months back, methodical, deliberate. This hadn't been a mistake or a moment of weakness. It had been a plan, built quietly while she focused on the baby growing inside her. That same week, 2 letters had been waiting for Natalie, one on her dresser for nearly a month, one delivered urgently by courier. Both from her late father's estate attorney, a man named David Chen. Inside the first was a letter in her father's own handwriting, written before he passed. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and something has gone wrong in your life. I've established a trust in your name, managed by David Chen, a man I trust completely. Use these resources to rebuild, to protect yourself, and to fight back if you ever need to." Natalie called the number with shaking hands. David Chen confirmed what she could barely process. Her father had quietly built an irrevocable trust in her name over a year before his death. It had matured to $148 million, entirely protected, entirely hers, untouchable by a spouse, a creditor, or anyone else. Her father hadn't just left her money. He'd left her the power to fight back, exactly when she needed it most. The next morning, Natalie walked into David Chen's office with her newborn against her chest and met the 2 people who would help her take her life back. Diane Marsh, a formidable family law attorney, and Frank Delgado, a former detective her father had quietly hired years earlier, just in case. Frank had already been watching, at her father's long-standing request. He laid out the evidence. Surveillance photos of Brandon at Chloe's apartment building going back months, financial records showing systematic transfers over 8 weeks, phone records showing 7 calls to Chloe during Natalie's labor, one of them 14 minutes long. By that afternoon, Diane had filed a motion to freeze every account under Brandon's name. It was granted within hours. Every card he had, and Chloe's, stopped working within the same day at a bank counter. And at a dinner table, in front of Chloe herself. 1 week later, in a packed courtroom, the evidence was laid out in full. The transfers timed to Natalie's labor and delivery, the text messages between Brandon and Chloe planning their exit, the surveillance photos, the hospital notes documenting his absence and detachment. Mrs. Ortiz testified about what she'd witnessed from across the street. Brandon, cornered by the evidence, stood and shouted that he'd only been unhappy, that he was going to leave anyway, before catching himself and realizing what he'd just admitted in open court. The judge did not hesitate. Divorce granted, full custody to Natalie, all assets returned plus damages, criminal referral for financial exploitation. Brandon was led away in restraints, still calling her name. Outside the courthouse, he broke free from his escort just long enough to beg her for another chance. Natalie, calm and clear, told him the truth. "You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was choose deliberately, repeatedly, to hurt me when I was at my weakest. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." She walked away without looking back. That evening, an email arrived from David Chen, timed to be sent only after everything was resolved. Inside was a video of Natalie's father, recorded before his death. "If you're watching this, it means you fought back," he said. "It means you're still the strong, brilliant daughter I raised. Whatever pain brought you to this moment, you were never alone. Now go build the life you deserve." Natalie built exactly that. Not a life defined by revenge, but one defined by resilience, her daughter safe, her father's love reaching across death to protect her exactly when she needed it most. Natalie's story is a reminder that the people who try to make you feel powerless often have no idea what quiet strength you're carrying, or what protection has already been put in place for you long before you ever needed it. If this story meant something to you, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one.